Okay, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So I will try to take over the place of Rabbi Vaknin. He's very, very strong, very inspiring. I will try, Bezat Hashem, to teach some Zera Shimshon, Bezat Hashem. And the topic that I choose this week is a very interesting topic. We are going to speak about dogs. Why I choose this topic? Because in our Parashat Bo, we are speaking about the last 3 plagues that the Hashem sent on the Egyptians. And by the last plague, the Torah comes and say, "Ulechol bnei Israel lo yecheratz kelev lesho." It means that when Hashem came down to kill the firstborn, the Torah emphasized that dogs didn't bark at that time. It was a complete silence by the dogs. And here comes the question to mind, what the Torah wants to speak about? What the Torah wants to emphasize? What is the message behind it? And the Zera Shimshon is asking that question, and we are going to see very interesting ideas about dogs. So, yes, of course, Leilu Nishmat, the Dvar Torah, Bezat Hashem, will be Leilu Nishmat, and of course the food will be Leilu Nishmat for Eleazar Akoel ben Angela, and of course for Baba Sali, because today is also the outside of Baba Sali. Thank you, Daniel, for all you do for this shiur, to bring so many Jews together to learn some Torah. It's a big zechut. Chazak u'baruch. So the question is, why the Torah wants to emphasize that the dogs remain silent at the time when HaKadosh Baruch Hu killed the firstborn. And here comes a story. You know, it was once Mr. Cohen. He had a wine liquor store. And like every Sunday, he was opening his store for people to come and to try some new wine that he just got. And people loved to go by him. They were tasting and then ordering some case of wine. And one day, on a Sunday morning, someone blinds come to him into his store. The blind person doesn't see, and he has with him this dog that leads him everywhere. And he's waiting in the line to taste some wine because he heard that he has beautiful and tasty wine. And suddenly, the dogs becomes a little bit. He starts to go from excited. Let's say like that. And we should know that in that store, the Mr. Cohen had a way to present some kind of design. The barrels of wine that he had a lot of barrels with some pipes connecting one barrel to the other. And that Sunday, one of the barrels will open. Most likely, the dogs felt the wine, and he's jumping, and he's starting to drink some wine from the barrel. Nobody noticed at the beginning, but Mr. Cohen, he saw an animal jumping on the barrels. He says, "No, don't do that." It was too late. And now, he didn't have anything to sell, because halakha-wise, it's not a problem. If a non-kosher animal ate from a food, you are allowed to eat it. But here, the problem was, it's not clean. And furthermore, they found out that this dog was sick. So they couldn't use the wine, and it was a waste for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Mr. Cohen, furious, goes to that blind person. He says, "You need to pay me back. Your dog just damaged me so much money. You need to pay me back." The blind person says, "I'm so sorry. First of all, I'm blind. Number 2, why did you let your barrel open? You had to close it." And they went into a fight, into argument, and they didn't know what to do. And as Jews, when they argue between themselves, they went to Din Torah. They went to the rabbinical court in front of rabbis to hear what the halakha says on that specific case. The rabbis are sitting there and they're hearing the blind person, Mr. Cohen, arguing with themselves. And they are trying to find a solution once a month and then there and another. For weeks and weeks, the rabbi started to see who is right in that issue. Is Mr. Cohen, is the blind person is to pay or not? But they saw that the situation is this case is very hard to resolve because, when you make a damage to someone, so the damage is seen. You broke the window of someone, the window is broken, so if. But here, because the dog drank from that wine, we don't see any damage. The wine remains as is. Just because of the dog, the wine is not drinkable anymore. So it has a completely different halacha than a regular damage. So they started to argue with it themselves, the rabbis, and to think together, what is the solution according to halacha? Is the blind person does the blind person must pay or not? At a specific point, one of the rabbis in that Bedin, he found himself one day with Rav Chaim Kanievsky. And he said, you know what? Rav Chaim is here. Let me ask that question. He's going to Rav Chaim, and as we know, Rav Chaim didn't have so much time, so he's explaining very quick the situation. And Rav Chaim, in seconds, he says the blind person is exempt. He's patur. He's not paying anything. So the rabbi is asking Rav Chaim, we have weeks of learning and trying to think between ourselves, and in seconds you tell us patur. How come? So Rav Chaim says, I have one question for you. Did the dog smell the wine before he drank or no? Do you know that detail? He says yes. Mr. Cohen said that before he drank from the wine, first the dog smelled the wine. He says, if this is so, yes, the blind person is patur, is exempt to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage that the dog caused. And then the rabbi says to Rav Chaim, please, I know that you don't have time. Maybe you can explain me what is the logic behind why if he smelled it and if he didn't smell, what's the difference? And here, Rav Chaim says, I will tell you a small story. And the story is found in the Gemara. Gemara Masechet Rosh Hashanah. We are speaking about the son of Achashverosh and Esther. Esther and Achashverosh had a son, and his name was Daryavesh. The second Daryavesh. We had two Daryavesh. The second Daryavesh was the son of Achashverosh and Esther. Now, this king, he became king after Achashverosh passed away. This king, at the beginning of his leadership, he was a good king. And then, afterwards, he became immoral. At the beginning, he decided to give the permission to Jewish people to rebuild the second Bet HaMikdash. Daryavesh, the son of Esther and Achashverosh, he is the one that gave the green light. However...
That's Cyrus.
Yes, Daryavesh is Cyrus, yes.
Uh-huh.
It's in Hebrew, Daryavesh. And afterwards became immoral, as we're gonna say. Now, Daryavesh, as maybe most of the kings at that time, he had a minister of the wine. We can see it by Paro in the Torah. We have the person in charge to give him the wine every day or every meal. Now, this person, the minister of the wine, should be someone that is tremendously believed, meaning the king is trusting him thousands of percentage. Why? Because if one day that person wants to kill the king, he just puts some poison into the wine, and that's it. The king is getting killed. Why? So therefore, that person is to be tremendously, trusted, and a serious trait. Who was the minister of the one of Daryavesh? Hanavi Nehemiah, the prophet Nehemiah. In the 24 books of Torah, you have one book called Nehemiah. He is the one that was the helper of Daryavesh, about the minister of the wine. Now, Nehemiah, he was going every day with a smiling face, beautiful face. He was a rabbi, and giving the wine to Daryavesh. Sometimes Daryavesh was saying, Nehemiah, taste from the wine before you give it to me. So if something happens, Nehemiah is going to Chas v'shalom. And one day, Nehemiah is coming and he says, "Here, dear king, as every day, I'm bringing you the wine." Daryavesh says, "Atar Shata." This was the Persian name of Nehemiah. Atar Shata. Why Atar Shata? In parentheses, why Atar Shata? Because there is an issue here. A Jew is not allowed to taste from a non-Jewish wine. This is called Stam Yenam. It's not allowed. So why it's not allowed? The sages said to not become closer to the non-Jews and then get married with them. So we want to make some kind of fences, separation between the Jews and non-Jews. So we should not drink with non-Jews together wine. However, on that same time when they made that decree, they made an exception. They said the only Jew that is accepted in that decree will be Nehemiah. Why? Because he is the right hand of the king, and he must, as a profession, he must drink from that wine. So we are accepting this man from that prohibition. But in general, every Jew is not allowed to drink wine, non-Jewish wine. So the king says and therefore we called him Atar Shata. What is Atar Shata? Heter in Hebrew means permission. Shata, to drink. He was named the person that was permitted to drink. Atar Shata. And then what happened? So Daryavesh says, I see on your face that you are not happy as usual. Your face seems to be a little bit stressful. You know, when someone is stressed in his face, you can see on his face, it means that he's making he's preparing a plan against me. Are you preparing something against me? As if he was saying, maybe you put some poison in the wine. So Nehemiah just shocked, because if the king says that to him, it means that it's very dangerous. He says, "No, my dear king, I really highly respect you. I want the best for you. I'm with you all the way, like every day. But my face that you see today, that I'm a little bit different, is because I get some news from Jerusalem. And the king allowed it to build the second Bet HaMikdash, the second temple. However, we have some non-Jews that doesn't want to let that happen. And there are fights, there are political issues, and they cannot proceed to the building of the Bet HaMikdash. So therefore, because I'm stressed from that situation, therefore I'm a little bit different today." He says, "No problem, Atar Shata." The king says, "Atar Shata, no problem. I'm allowing you to go for a small time, to go to Jerusalem. I'm giving you soldiers, money, whatever you need, in order to move forward that plan, and the Bet HaMikdash should be built. No problem. But you need to come back." Most likely, he liked the wine that he was giving him every day, so he didn't want to lose him. So he says, "Come back very soon, but I'm giving you everything to have that plan to move forward, and then you should be always happy." Now, the Gemara explains something not usual. He's bringing, in the Gemara Masechet Rosh Hashanah that I'm bringing now the story, the Gemara brings some verses that speaks about the position of Nehemiah standing in front of the king Daryavesh. Position. And the Gemara says that, in Nehemiah it says, that Daryavesh was sitting on his throne next to Shegal. In Hebrew, the word is Shegal. The verse says Shegal. And the Gemara is asking, what is Shegal? What is the meaning of that word? We never saw such a name, such a word. Maybe the king next to Shegal means, maybe the Shegal means the queen. The king sits next to the queen. This is maybe the answer of that, what is the meaning of that word. But the Gemara says no. Daryavesh at that time became immoral. And Shegal means a dog. It means that he took the honor of animal like an honor of human being, and he took a dog to become his queen. And therefore the Torah says in the Nehemiah that he was sitting next to Shegal to say that this is a man that highly respected the animal so much as if the animal became his queen. A human, even more important, a queen, more important than a regular citizen. This queen. And then the Gemara continues. And it says, Shegal means a dog? The queen of the king is Shegal is a dog? I don't understand. Because we have a question. In the book of Daniel, another book of the 24 books of Torah, we have a story about Belshazzar. Who is Belshazzar? Belshazzar is the grandchild of Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon, right? And he was a Rasha, he was a wicked man. His grandson also was a wicked man, as we see, because the story goes like this. Belshazzar, he took all the items of the Bet HaMikdash. It was cups that was used for the sacrifices, spoons, forks, knives that were used for the sake of God. And because Nebuchadnezzar took everything, so he was making a party. The Daniel speaks about it. He making a party, and he took out all the items of the Bet HaMikdash, beautiful gold and silver items, and he took a lot of wine and he poured into a cup of the Bet HaMikdash, and he was drinking and drinking as if it's a sign that he is victorious on the Jewish people. The Jewish people just failed. Look, I'm using their most holiest item for my sake, meaning I am the king. And he's drinking and drinking and drinking, and again, in Sefer Daniel, the Torah says, and he drank wine and he gave to Shegal. Again, that same name. And the Gemara says, I don't understand. If you say that by Daryaveh Shegal means a dog, it means that Nebuchadnezzar gave wine to Shegal, to dogs, with the items of the Bet HaMikdash. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So the Gemara pushed away that interpretation, and he says, no, Shegal by Dayavesh is a dog. However, Shegal by Daniel, by Belshazzar, it's not a dog. This is the queen, the real queen. Why we should not say that this is not a dog? Because dogs, and here is the point, because dogs don't like wine. If you give to drink, I never tried it, but this is what the Gemara says. If you want a dog to drink wine, it will not like it. Because dogs don't like to drink wine. Come Rav Kanievsky, this was the answer of Rav Kanievsky to the rabbi explaining why the blind person is exempt to pay. Come Rav Kanievsky, and he says, now tell me, the dog jumped on that barrel, right? And he drank from the wine. Is it something usual or unusual? So he says, most likely unusual, because the Gemara says, you just told me that dogs doesn't like wine. So he says, Rab Chaim says like this. So let me tell you something. You know, in the laws of damage, you have, among other damages, you have two kinds of damage. You have number one damage, which is a damage when an animal, let's say, the animal is enjoying the damage. For example, you have a dog, and that dog pass by a butcher, okay? And the dog, somehow, he jumped on the meat and he's starting to eat. The dog has an enjoyment from that, right? Not only the dog has an enjoyment, but also the master of the dog has an enjoyment. Why? Because now the dog is full, and the master of the dog doesn't have to feed him now because he just ate the meat. Right? So this is one kind of damage. In that kind of damage, the boss, the master of the dog needs to pay back to the butcher, to the store, what the dog ate. Why? Because the dog enjoyed. However, you have another kind of damage by animals. It can be by dogs or other animal, that the animal is breaking something without enjoying it. For example, you had an item on your table, the dog jumped and he is banging the item and he's breaking it. Did he enjoy it? No. Did the master enjoy it? No. But the item is broken. In that case, because it wasn't enjoyment by the animal and not by the master of the animal, So in that case, the master should not pay back the damage of that dog.
The owner of that dog.
The owner of the dog doesn't need to pay back. Why? Because the dog made a damage without enjoyment. So if this is so, I see your question. If this is so any animal can just destroy everything and everything is fine. No. We have the Torah saying that as a punishment, in Hebrew a knas, a punishment, the owner of the animal needs to pay half of the damage. It's if, let's say, the item is $1,000, the animal broke it without enjoyment, so the owner needs to pay only $500 for 3 times. On the 3rd time, that's it. As a punishment, is to pay everything. Why? Because 3 times happen that your animal breaks something. You should be more careful about it. If you didn't, so you need to pay everything. But again, it's not because it's the law. It's above the law. It's the punishment. As a punishment, you are going to pay half of the damage for 3 times and then full damage. Understand? So whenever the animal is enjoying it, is like you are refunding whatever you enjoyed. The animal enjoyed, you enjoyed, so you refund whatever you enjoyed. If it's $1,000, it's $1,000. Here, when the animal doesn't enjoy, it's not a refunding, it's not paying back whatever. It's a punishment that he needs to pay half of the damage, or all the damage after 3 times. You understand the difference? Now, let's take the case of the blind person with the dog. Come Rav Chaim, and he says, let's see. We just had the Gemara saying that the dog doesn't drink wine. So, is he enjoying when he drinks wine or not? No. If there is no enjoyment, is the owner should pay back the damage or not? We said not. But as a punishment, he needs to pay half of the damage. So the Rabbi says, so why Rav Chaim, why the Rabbi told me that the blind person should not pay anything, he should pay half of it? He says, no, because today the Bedin cannot punish, cannot put a knas. And because it's a punishment and not a refunding, it's not paying back, it's a punishment, we cannot ask the blind person to pay anything. So therefore, Rav Chaim says, the blind person should not pay back the money of the wine. So what we understood here? We understood here something very interesting. That number one, dogs don't like wine. It's interesting. The Gemara says that. Number two, we learned about Nehemiah, Belshazzar, a lot of history as well. And here comes the question that we started the show with. The question was that in our Parashat Bo, we speak about the last plague that the Egyptian got, the death of firstborn. And the Torah says, Lo yecheratz kelev leshono. At that time, the dogs didn't bark. And the question was, why the dogs didn't bark at that time? And here comes the answer. The answer is, you know why? Because Akadosh Baruch Hu at that specific time, first, you know that there is a Gemara. The Gemara says that whenever the Malach HaMavet, the death angel, comes to the world to kill somebody, the dogs are barking. They feel the presence of the angel of death, and it's time to bark. So here, the Torah says they didn't bark. What does that mean? It means that who killed the firstborn of Egyptian? Not the angel of death. Hashem himself came down. Therefore, they didn't bark, because this was a proof that it wasn't a usual. Hashem says, I am going to save you, to take you out of Egypt. How do you know that Hashem himself came down? Maybe an angel came down. You know how? Because the proof is that they didn't bark. If they didn't bark, it means that the angel of death didn't come to kill them. Hashem himself killed them, and he took out from Egypt the Jewish people. And because of that fact, that the dogs didn't bark at that time, they were rewarded reward. How the dogs were rewarded? Afterward, in the Torah, we read a law that whenever a shochet, a rabbi that make the shechita to an animal, he is making a shechita and the animal comes out not kosher. The shechita wasn't proper, right? So it's called a trefa. Or an animal that is sick and is not kosher, even if it's a cow, it's not kosher because he's sick and he has a problem, so it cannot be eaten. It's a nevela, right? So it says, "Trefa o nevela la kelev tashlichun oto." The Torah says there is a mitzvah. You should throw the cow or any kosher animal that the shechita wasn't proper to who? To the dogs. Why you choose to the dogs? Why the Torah says the dogs? You know why? Because they didn't bark when Kadosh Baruch Hu came down to kill the firstborn. They just remained silent. So as a reward, we are giving them food in order to remind that idea that it was a miracle that they didn't bark. This is, we have some more time? Yeah. This is first answer. Why the dogs didn't bark? Because Hashem himself came down to the... Another answer, why the dogs didn't bark? And here it's a little bit more deeper answer. You know, the Jewish people came down in Egypt for which reason they were in exile there. Why? Why they went in exile in Egypt? You know why? Because of the mouth. Why because of the mouth? The brother of Yosef and Yosef couldn't speak with each other. Yosef was bringing the bad actions, was speaking to Yaakov about the bad action that the brothers used to do. And also later on, when Moshe Rabbeinu saw Datan and Aviram fighting with each other, Moshe Rabbeinu said, "Stop, you are a Rasha, you should not fight with hands. This is not you." So Datan and Aviram said, "Oh, hal orgeni ata omer, you want to kill me just like you killed the Egyptian yesterday." So ata omer, it means that it has to do with the speech. It means that they were speaking bad on Moshe Rabbeinu about what he did about the Egyptians. So we see here that they had an issue of lashon hara, of speaking bad on other people, right? Comes the Torah and say, after the exile was done, they fixed that problem of speaking bad about someone else. How do we know that? Because usually whenever the dogs see something special happens, they barking. In the night, they bark. Here, when they went up from Egypt, the dogs didn't bark. Why they should bark at the first place? Why they should bark? You know why? Because, and here it's a new point, because they went out on the 15th of the month of Nisan, right? The 15th of the month of Nisan, the moon is full, right? The first day of the month, the moon we don't see it. On the 15th of the month, the moon is full. And on the last day of the month, again, the moon it disappears, right? The dogs, when they see the full moon, they start to bark. Because they see something weird in the sky, they should bark. Here come the Torah and say, they didn't bark on the moon. You know why? Because the Jewish people fixed their bad speech that they used to do. So this had a reflection on the dogs. They didn't bark at that time. So we see here, this is the message of the shiur of today. The message is that we are almost 2,000 years in the exile after the destruction of Second Beit HaMikdash. This also has to do with lashon hara, with bad speaking. And whenever we are fixing our actions, our speech, so then HaKadosh Baruch Hu just take us out from Egypt, from the exile. As we see that the exile in general, exile of Babel, Edom, this exile, are connected with exile of Egypt. Just like we saw wonders in Egypt when we went out from Egypt, we are going to see wonders when we will go out from this exile. So just like by the Egyptian time, when we went out from Egypt, the dogs didn't bark. Why? Because we fixed our speech, just like today. Also, when we are improving in the bad speech, we are also going out from exile.
You have a nice story about Baba Sali?
So, as a conclusion, Daniel wants to conclude with Baba Sali. I have a nice story, and it has to do with me. Of course, I didn't meet Baba Sali because he passed away before I was born even. But it has to do with me because as you can hear, I have an accent. It's a French accent. I'm French. And I grew up in Paris. And I learned in a yeshiva of Chabad. Next to Paris, it's called Brunois. The name of the city. It's like upstate New York, not far away. It's like 40 minutes drive from Paris. And I grew up there. It's a big campus, big campus. This yeshiva is maybe 70, 80 years old. And Baba Sali, for 11 years, used to come to Brunois from Israel to Brunois for Elul and Tishri as a preparation for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and the month of Elul. He used to come to Brunois, and until today we have a small mikveh, and the Bachurim know that this is the mikveh of Baba Sali because he went into that mikveh, the small mikveh. Every day I used to go there because it's the mikveh of the yeshiva. And Baba Saleh used to be there for 1 month and 10 days until after Yom Kippur, and then he's coming back to Israel. And there is a story that one day Baba Saleh asked Rabbi Nissan Nemanov, which is the big mashpia rabbi in the yeshiva. Alav Hashem, he passed away a long time ago, and he asked him if he can have one of the students learning with him. And at that time in Brunois, it was a lot of Moroccan students coming from Morocco, learning in the yeshiva of Brunois. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe says to Rabbi Nissan Nemanov and all the rabbis there, do not change the tradition of the Sephardic Bachurim. Do not change them. And by the way, one of those Bachurim is he became the rabbi of Rabbi Shlomo Amar of Israel, the Rishon LeZion, Rabbi Shlomo Amar. He used to learn by one of the Bachurim that used to come to Brunois. So now we understand why the Lubavitcher Rebbe says do not change their tradition, because they will be the leaders of the Sephardic world today. And no one knew that by that. But so the Rabbi Nissan Nemanov says to Baba Saleh, of course, I will give you one of the students. It's Rabbi Yehoshua Haddad. Yehoshua Haddad was a young man at that time, and he became afterward the rabbi of Italy later on. And he used to wake up every night, in the middle of the night, and learning with Baba Saleh. Learning with Baba Saleh on one-on-one, in the middle of the night, what they were learning together, Likutei Torah and Torah Or. 2 books of the Admor HaZaken, very deep book of Chassidut. And Baba Saleh, he had an issue in his eyes when he became old. So he was saying to Rabbi Yehoshua Haddad, read for me the Torah Or, I'm listening. And he was reading for him, and as a young man, he doesn't understand, it's too deep for him, but Baba Saleh was listening. He was listening every night like this for a whole month and 10 days, and sometimes we were asking questions, and sometimes he was saying, Yehoshua, just stop there. Wow, Admor HaZaken, where do you bring us? Where do you bring us? Because he was reading from the Admor HaZaken teachings, and he says, where do you bring us? Because he was so elevated. One last anecdote about Baba Saleh. Baba Saleh had a grandchild, Rabbi Machluf Crispin. Rabbi Machluf Crispin, he was like the helper of Baba Saleh. And he says like this, that he used to prepare a tea for Baba Saleh every evening for him to learn in the middle of the night or late in the night. And Baba Saleh used to ask him always two teas. So first day he thought that Baba Saleh liked tea, so he wanted two teas to finish 2 cups. But afterward he saw that no, it's not that. So one day he's asking and he says, Baba Saleh, can you please explain why 2 teas? He says, one for me and one for the Rabbi of Lubavitch. They never met. One in Israel, one in America, never physically met. Never, ever. But, and even more than that, Baba Saleh wrote in 1952, wrote a letter to the Rabbi Lubavitch asking, can I come live in Crown Heights? Leave Israel to live in Crown Heights next to you. And And the Rabbi says, no, you cannot do that because you have a whole world behind you. You cannot just left you. I also want to come to Israel, but I have so many Jews here, I cannot leave my spot. And like this, Baba Sali stayed in Israel, but he had a tremendous respect for, in general, the Murazaken Chassidut and the Rabbi of Lubavitch. Tien Nishmat Tzora B'Tzorachim.
Thank you. Thank you so much.